if I say it's okay, it must be okay. We're at the end of the day. We're hot, we're tired, we wanted to wrap up and get out of there. We put ourselves, or I put myself under a certain amount of pressure to perform because a thunderstorm was coming in on us and I didn't want to wait it out.
Jeff, Espenship, thank you so much for joining us today.
Awesome. Well, good to be here, Mark. Thanks for having me, man.
We'll, ju- we'll jump right into it here. You've got an incredible story to tell. Really, it's amazing. And for those of us in the audience who might not be familiar with your background, how you got into what you're doing today, give us a rundown of your past there.
Okay. Well, I'm a pilot. I'm a professional aviator. I started flying when I was 14 years old, basically back when the Wright brothers were still flying. I was That's when I was learning. And I soloed when I was 16 years old and got a pilot's license when I was 17. Started flying commercially at 18. And did that through college. I was a banner tow pilot through college. Those kids that pulled the banners around the beaches and up and down over the football games. So I got free tickets to the football games that I went and pulled banners over. And then I went in the Air Force and then became a fighter pilot. I was one of those. I didn't know it back then, but I was an iconic A-10 Warthog fighter pilot. The old venerable A-10, great airplane, a lot of fun to fly. So I did that for 6 years, and I'm glad they let me do it because the only requirements were that you had to be short and you had to be stupid. And if you were real stupid, they waived the height requirement. so I made it in. And then I was fortunate enough to get hired with the airlines. And so I was an airline pilot at a very young age. And then during that time, I had access to a 1943 AT-6 Texan. AT stands for Advanced Trainer. And that airplane taught fighter pilots of World War II the basics of dogfighting, air-to-air gunnery, bombing skills. So I flew that airplane to air shows up and down the East Coast as kind of a side hustle when I was in the airlines, and that air show business I flew along with my brother, and that's kind of the catalyst of how this whole story of mine comes about because I lost my brother in that airplane. They were actually he and another pilot were flying to an air show, and so I lost him in that, and it was a profound loss to me because basically something that he watched me do previously. He watched me take a shortcut, and then he replicated the same shortcut several weeks later, and it cost him his life. So so that is the opening of what happened, and that's how I got into this business of sharing those lessons learned. Something that I learned out on the job, just working, getting things done, and just took a quick shortcut, and I mean quick. A lot of these human behavior actions that we take, we don't really think about it in a moment. We just do it, and you never know what you're doing today, how it's going to influence someone else's future work behavior tomorrow, 6 months from now, hell, after you've gone and retired. They may be doing something well or errantly and unsafely because of something you showed them or taught them. So that's the bubble and the catalyst that spring that started this whole speaking gig, and I've been doing it over 23 years. I speak all over the country and really all over the world, just giving that message. And it's about a 45, 50-minute keynote with lots of pictures. I make them laugh, make them cry, make them laugh, and I take the audience through this fugoid oscillation of emotions, which is what you're going to experience if you lose somebody at work. We're all pretty much family members, like my brother was, and if you get somebody hurt or killed on the job, it's not pretty. So that's how that came about.
There's a key part of that I think is important, something that you bring up there, which is, I don't know if the best way to describe it is a butterfly effect, but You do something today, there's going to be an effect later on, and it's hard to really know what that's going to be until it's too late.
Something happens. And and I bring up those that very point because, you know, I ask, first of all, why don't we speak up? What are the barriers that people, psychologically when they're out there working, they see something that's not right. Why don't we speak up? And there's a number of reasons. My gosh, I was working with my brother and I showed him that shortcut. He gave me a quizzical look, but he didn't use his words. And why didn't he do that? Well, there's like familiarity. We like each other. We trust each other. We grew up together. I was in charge. I'm the boss, applesauce. So if I say it's okay, it must be okay. We're at the end of the day. We're hot. We're tired. We wanted to wrap up and get out of there. Um, we put ourselves, or I put myself, under a certain amount of pressure to perform because a thunderstorm was coming in on us, and I didn't want to wait it out. So, plus the equipment, the engine, it always worked when I encouraged him to not to pull the propeller blade through, which was the shortcut that we took. Um, uh, he also knew that that engine always worked, never gave us a problem. So all of these factors, Mark, we're very quick as humans when we're getting ready to get it done, and start throwing that productivity ball a little bit higher than the safety ball when we're out there juggling safety, quality, productivity, and we want to get something done. Man, we can very quickly rationalize away what is right. And we can very easily show others how easy it is to break the rules and still live. And we don't realize by doing it, it's so subtle that as soon as we take that shortcut and we show somebody else, we start what I call a normalization of deviancy death spiral. And that can start that butterfly effect. And you can get away with it for just a couple of hours, a couple of days, months, years even. And then all of a sudden, boom, something happens. People are like, oh my God, well, what happened? But there are some people that go, I knew that shit was going to happen. I knew that was coming. And that is what I want audiences to tune into. I want them to figure out, where are those I knew it moments? Where are those moments that if you're sitting at home and you got a phone call from a buddy of yours, you go, hello? And they go, hey man, did you hear we had an accident at the plant today? Hey, you know what happened? No man, what happened? Guess what happened? And are you able to guess? Or guess who it was? And are you able to throw out a name? Those are your I knew it people and your I knew it moments. So not only do I talk about my brother's accident, I give him that full anecdote with lots of pictures. I also give him another anecdote of a pilot by the name of Bud Holland who crashed a B-52, and it was caught on camera. And so you get to see the fallout of that accident, and you get to see the fallout of the family, because when you hurt or kill yourself or someone else, it's just not you that's affected, as you well know. It cuts a wide swath through the organization. Yeah,
There's a huge impact, and it goes so much more and beyond just the individual. When it comes to that specific event, I know you talk about it quite a
sure,
lot, but walk us through, because I think it's very important to hear,
sure.
that day when you found out that news, because it's,
Right.
some people in the audience have probably had that, and some may not have. And I think
Yeah,
it's important to understand the consequences of what happens when we skip those steps.
absolutely, Mark. The groups that I speak to, everybody in the audience, there will be people in there who have lost somebody on their watch. They know what that's like to get a phone call. They've been to the hospitals. They've had to go talk to families. They're part of that investigation that invariably happens. So people in the audience do identify with this story. So my story began as an air show pilot. My brother and I had done many air shows together on the weekends, and this particular air show that we went to, it was on a Sunday afternoon. We had just finished the show. We were packing everything up, getting ready to go. I'm up in the cockpit. I'm doing my pre-flight checks. and I look out on the horizon and I see one of those afternoon thunderstorms coming our way. Now, here we are now, very subtly going into the briar patch of human behaviors and what influences smart people to do stupid things. So here I am, well trained. I know the equipment. I know the processes, the procedures, and the checklists. And so, what are those things? And that's what I want audiences to dial into: is what makes you, as an individual or as a team, go out there and do something errantly and unsafely. In other words, what's going to make your brain shrink a little bit and do something dumb, dangerous, or different? So, when I'm setting this up, I want them sitting in the cockpit with me, being in my shoes and processing things the way I'm processing. So I'm out there as an operator, operating this airplane, but I'm also the supervisor, right? Because I'm the person in charge. I got the license. So I look out on the horizon, I see the thunderstorm coming, and I made in that moment what I call an emotional snap decision. I didn't wake up that morning planning on breaking rule number 53, but it just happened in a moment. So I knew my brother was going to walk around the trailing edge of the wing, go around to the front, and grab the propeller blade by hand, which is a procedure. It's a little procedure, but you're supposed to do that procedure, pull the propeller blade through at least 9 cylinders, the number of cylinders we add on the engine. And what you're doing is you're checking for what's called a hydraulic lock. It's a rare occurrence in these radial engines, these old round engines with the cylinders all around, and then you got the cylinder on the bottom. Very rarely, but sometimes oil might seep past the rings in that bottom piston and settle into that bottom cylinder down there. And if I push the starter button before we do that procedure and there's fluid down there, those top pistons fire, it can shove that bottom piston into that liquid down there. And liquid doesn't give. And you can damage your motor. You can damage it a little bit. You can damage it a lot. You don't know. So you're supposed to pull the propeller blade through. It takes about 5 minutes to do it. So you pull it through very slowly. And if you're pulling it through as you're exercising those pistons and it stops in your hand and it's kind of hard to pull, you have a hydraulic lock. You got an engine issue. So as I'm getting ready to go, I want to get out of there before that storm hit. And I just yelled down to my brother, because as he's walking around to pull that propeller blade through, I said, "Hey, don't worry about it. Let's go." Now, he looked at me with a questioning attitude, and that's a healthy thing to have in any organization. I certainly have. We all tell each other, "Hey, if you see something's not right, you speak up and you say something." But in that moment between the two of us, his nonverbal cue to me was, "Hey, this is a shortcut. We shouldn't be doing this." But we rationalized away what was right, and he skipped the 5 minutes. He gets in the back. You can hear him strap in back there, and I push the starter button on that very expensive 600 horsepower Pratt & Whitney engine. And you would think oh my God, the motor blew up. No, it didn't. That motor started right up, just like we expected it to. And we got out of there before that storm hit. And we landed safely back in Atlanta. And that is what happened on the job that day. You see, we got the work done. And without realizing it, I just showed my brother how easy it is to break the rules and still live. I showed him what I call situational compliance. Right? We all know how to comply, but situations change, things come up. And it's really important to be mentally aware and pay attention to those cues that you might be facing at work, and to know when to either slow down the work or stop the work, speak up, have a conversation. It is a conversation, not a confrontation, to get things back on the right track. And a lot of times we don't do that. We don't slow down. We don't stop. We just keep pressing ahead, because we're human. I mean, we want to get out there and produce and get things done. That's how we're wired. So without realizing that I did that to my brother, I started that normalization of deviancy death spiral. Every day starts with us right in the middle of that spiral, and then something comes up, a situation comes up. I don't know. Figure out what the situation that comes up in your place of work, whatever it is. For me, on that particular day, it was a pressure to perform, a pressure that I put on myself. Nobody else was putting it on me. I was putting it on myself. And sometimes we're our own worst enemies. So I started that death spiral, and usually when we do something like that and we get away with it, guess what? We get emboldened. Oh, nothing happens, and we get emboldened, and now the next short comes a little bit easier, and we get away with that. We get more emboldened, and now other people are starting to see that same kind of shortcut, and they're seeing the same type of productivity, and it's getting rewarded. What we encourage is what we consent to. That's if you consent to it, you're encouraging it. So you enable everything you consent to. So so then that spiral can just start until, bam, just like I was telling you, it hits you out of the clear blue. So I talk to the audience about that death spiral, and then I go back to the story with my brother, because where that happened, and the event that touched me, and the audience doesn't even know this is coming. They don't have a clue that I've lost my brother, because we built him up on this high, this mountaintop, and we're all left laughing, and I'm telling stories about him. They're all dialed into it and having a great time. And that's how it is at work. When you work in the field of energy like we do, whether it's petroleum, chemical, manufacturing, construction, transportation, nuclear. I'm in the aviation field. You work in that stuff, energy, combustion, inertia, gravity. How you screw it up, how your day turns out is a matter of luck and physics. And you're just out there getting things done and having a great time, and then out of left field, it just hits you. So for my brother, we had another air show to do down in Vero Beach, Florida. Well, I was on an airline trip, and I couldn't get the airplane in place in Florida in time to do the show that Friday. So I hired another pilot. His name was Craig. So my brother Johnny and Craig, they were going to ferry the airplane down to Vero Beach, and then I was going to commercial in later that night and do the show Saturday and Sunday. So they were going to fly it down Friday afternoon. I was going to commercial in Friday night. A couple hours after they took off Friday afternoon, I get a telephone call. And that's usually what happens in the world of energy. You're sitting at home, or you're at work, or you're just minding your business, doing your thing, and a phone call comes out of the clear blue, and they have some devastating news. And that's how I heard about it. The air boss at the air show down there called me and said, "Hey man, basically the airplane never made it down to Vero Beach." He said, there's been an accident with 2 fatalities. So I lost my brother and a good friend in this world of energy that we work in at literally that fast. I never saw it coming. My world went from being way up here to down to the lowest lows, literally with that one phone call. Of course, you're shocked. You don't know what in the world happened, and you want to get to the bottom of it. And they get to the bottom of it, because we have to learn. We got to learn from those lagging indicators, if you will. That means that eventually, looking in the rearview mirror. When we drive a car, we got 2 windows that we're looking through to drive safely. We got the big one out in front, which is where we need to focus on. Those are all your leading indicators. That's all your training. That's all the checklists. That's all the processes, procedures that you get. But the rearview mirror is only this big. There's information in it. It's good stuff, but you don't drive forward staring at it. So everything in the rearview mirror is why you do what you do. Why do you do it this way? Well, come here and look at my rearview mirror. I'll show you why. But how you do your job, that's the big window out in front. So with the loss of my brother, I instantly went from looking out in the front to now having to focus and glance at that rearview mirror to learn what happened. And so those investigators, they started digging inside that engine, because that's what failed, and they saw that the entire bottom cylinder on that motor is huge, it's about that big around, was blown off that engine. And when they found that and they started digging inside that motor, they found the signs and the indications of a hydraulic lock. And so when they found that lead investigator, he got on the telephone with me. He started asking me a lot of hard questions. And these are the kind of questions I don't want any of the brothers and sisters out there working in the world of energy have to face. And you will face them. They do need to get to the bottom of it. And it's not comfortable. And you're sitting at the long end of a table. Everybody's got at the table's got a water glass except for you. And they're asking these questions. That's not fun. And he did ask me. He's like, hey, did those guys, did they know to pull that propeller blade through before they started that engine? I'm like, oh, yeah, they knew to do that. And then I always ask, do y'all know what the second question was that he asked? They're like, yeah, did you always do it? And so and those investigators, they kind of know the answers to the questions that they're asking. So they just want to see how you respond. And and so that investigator goes, Jeff, we went and asked the last person that saw them alive. That's the guy that put the fuel in the airplane. He said, we asked him what he remembered seeing. And this is what he said. He goes, the guy that put fuel in the airplane, he said he didn't remember them pulling that propeller blade through before they started that engine. He said, but I do remember them being in a big hurry for me to finish fueling this airplane because they were running late for some air show down in Florida. And so that was a gut punch to me. So that's how I found that, Mark. And so, and then, I was out on that crash scene literally as quick as I could get there within 8 hours. And it took a while for the investigation to come out. And so when I share that story with the audience, I think it's important, because we started out on the high. Now we're down in the valley, which is where you're going to be emotionally when you lose somebody. You're going to be in the lowest of low, and it's a horrible place to be. But I bring them down there artificially because I feel we tend to learn a little more when we're emotionally whacked in the face. And it's also why companies are so afraid, because they'll call me and they go, my God, Odie, we've been a couple of years without a major incident or accident. Now I'm really afraid we're going to get complacent. I call complacency the silent killer because we do get a little complacent. We are doing things very well and we're very efficient at it, but we're just afraid that we've been lucky. And the luck does play a part. We can't rely on luck. We'll take it, but can't rely on it. So anyway, after that, I kind of stepped the audience through some of the lessons that I learned from that.
I mean,
Yeah.
oh, I can't even just listening to that, right? I mean, my heart sinks. And I'm sure that's the same reaction that you see on stage when you're telling people this story. What role in safety, and this is something that I've been thinking about a lot and I've been hearing about a lot, is that the basic compliance checklists just aren't enough. We have
Mhm.
to relate it to something that means something to people, that they can draw a story from or they can relate to in some way. How powerful is emotion when it comes to building a successful safety culture?
Boy, I tell you what, emotion is everything. The emotional side of your brain, it's the fun side, it's the reactive side, it's the intuitive side, it's the side that comes up with bright ideas, but it's also the side that's not real accurate. Now, master your emotions. You'll master your life. How much trouble do we get into when we open our mouths and all of a sudden, now you can't get that paste back in the tube? So emotions are good. That's a good thing. That's why it occupies one side of our brain. But we also have a logic side. The logic side takes a little minute to kick in. The logic side is the side it's the bright idea editor. The emotional side creates those bright ideas. The left side edits them. So the logic side is the side that, hey, let's slow this down. Let's talk about this a minute. What does the book say? Kate, can you make a phone call and call so and so? They bounced up against this situation before. The logic side is the side that creates a culture of open communication. And that means listening to understand and not to argue. You want to fight for what is right, not to be right. You want to do things the best way, not just your way. And that begins speaking of leadership, because safety, quality, productivity, those are the three balls that you and I juggle every single day. And all your people out there, they're juggling these three balls: safety, quality, productivity. That's how we earn a living. And we're juggling these three balls within the framework of energy that can kill you. So because we're juggling these three balls and we get ourselves in certain situations without realizing, usually we get in there because we start throwing that productivity ball a little bit higher than the quality ball or the safety ball, because we're trying to get things done. And when we start to see that happen, we start to see the little things creeping in to work, like slips, trips, falls, bruises, cuts, burns, contusions, preventable vehicle accidents. These little things are like, oh my God, that was lucky. But we don't really get to the basics of the latent failures. What's really going on to cause that? Because it's a fine line, it's a feathered edge to go from a little thing to a big thing in the world of energy. So, to your point, emotions play a huge role in making errant and unsafe decisions out there. It's the emotional side of us that kicks in and causes smart people to do stupid things. We're not stupid, but we have done, myself included, some stupid things. And there are a lot of different tools and techniques that each of us need to think about before we go to work and say, what am I going to do today to encourage people to do the right thing when those emotions start to overcome us? We're all faced with this stuff. Everybody in the audience has, for example, run a red light. We've all done it. You don't wake up in the morning drinking your cup of coffee going, today I'm gonna hit that red light out on 4th and Main. I've always wanted to run that, but I'm gonna do it. You don't. It's
Yeah.
in a moment, and usually when that light turns yellow, you got a decision to make, and I mean right now. It's, do I hit the skinny pedal or do I hit the fat pedal? And there's a lot of things that are going through your mind to influence. How late am I? Oh, okay, I'm late. So next thing is, am I going to get caught? Am I going to be held accountable? So we always think about that too when we're making decisions. You look around, look over your shoulder. Well, nobody's looking. So those are things that influence our thought patterns and our behaviors when we're out there getting things done when these situations come up. But we don't realize how we might be showing others how to break the rules and still live when they're watching us. Because people learn by watching, not so much by listening.
I think there's a real, at the heart of this, is a real unfortunate truth about safety is that no news is good news. And it's
Yes,
really tough to report on a successful safety culture and a company that's doing something really well if nothing's
correct,
happening, right? There's
correct.
not necessarily as many
Yeah.
medals that are going out for nothing happening.
Correct. And see, and that is what concerns people in the safety field, because they can't be present all the time. They just are wondering, okay, how much of this is going because we're good, and how much is going on because we're lucky, and how much is it are we covering up small injuries, because we're rewarding people for not reporting things. So there's so many different crazy layers that go through this. I don't have answers. I can, only thing I can do is just go in and preach a good message and get people to rethink and refocus and revitalize themselves, because safety, quality, productivity just comes as a byproduct of personal value-based leadership. Just making a decision every day to go out there with a commitment to do the right thing. And when you do that, that energy that you give, it is catching. Other people will see it. And without realizing it, you personally could be changing the job culture out there. Job culture is different than company culture, okay? Company culture is the way it should be done. That's the company driving the senior leadership from above. When they tell you, we want you to stop and slow down, but they kind of get onto you for doing it, that's wrong. So company culture is the way it should be done. That's the way they teach you. Job culture, that's the way it is done. And that job culture, it can change, it can move, it can ebb, it can flow, job culture can change when you work by yourself. How do you work by yourself? Do you do it right every time, or do you just huge slacker? Do you speed everywhere? Are you on your phone all the time? Do you not use the proper PPE? All that when you're working by yourself and no one's looking over your shoulder. Or are you doing it right? Sometimes they do it right when they work with a certain safety supervisor or a leadership supervisor versus this person who's kind of loosey goosey. So it's our job every day to keep I call it the tale of two pulses. Got two fingers, keep them on the pulse. Hey, how is it being done, and how should it be done? And when there's any incongruence, that's your time to slow things down and speak up. So yeah.
And how do we bring those two together? Something that I'm always curious about is earning buy-in from leadership and then also from your employees. How do we, let's say I'm in a leadership position, how do you start earning the buy-in of your employees to start doing the job the same as how we want it done, right? When you talk about those two pulses, how do we start getting those two things in line, and how much of that relies on the leaders?
So it's everything from the leader. So now you're asking a how do we question. Okay. So I'm going to caveat that with I don't have answers. I can tell you why you should do it. So there's always a how and there's a why. So every day when you go to work, there are really no born leaders. Leaders, you have to train yourself. You have to read and think and talk to each other and communicate, and you get better as you go. Some people get promoted into positions to become a leader. No, you should be promoted into that position because you already are a leader. So yeah, so leadership is everything, and part of becoming a leader is understanding that dynamic of how do I communicate with people, how do I bring them together to embrace and buy in the stuff that I'm trying to sell, which is in this sense safety in the workplace. And a piece of it is, hey, understanding if you hurt yourself or hurt somebody else, the footprint is much bigger than yourself. It's much larger. You got family and friends and so forth. Um, so so how you end up doing that is really up to each person individual as to how you do it, and that's going to depend on that person's personality, their attitude. For when my brother's accident, some of the lessons that I learned from it was, first of all, when I found out everything that I found out, and I was able to kind of reflect on what I did and what my role was. Um, there were only two people that saw us take that shortcut, right? It was myself and my brother. My brother's dead. So that leaves one of us who knows, as Paul Harvey would say, I'll date myself, that leaves one of us who knows the rest of the story. So as all that information came out, my first reaction as the supervisor and as the leader of that air show business was to blame everybody but me. And that is it's a trap that we fall into as adults. Is it's hard for us to reflect inward when things go wrong. We tend to want to figure out how to push that blame off on other people instead of reflecting inward and getting your peace. But the minute that you can start doing that and sharing mistakes you may have made, lessons learned, so that others can profit by it, then the others will look at you as the leader and go, man, this person is awesome. Not only is he or she good at their job, they also have a bit of humility and humbleness. Being humble is big, and it doesn't mean you lack competence and you're not any good because you have humility. It just means, hey, I've learned a few things, and I'm gonna pass them on to you. And I say experience. I have a lot of experience because I'm old. And I say experience is that thing you get after you need it. Unless, right? Unless you're willing to listen and learn from the mistakes and experiences of others, because you won't live long enough to make all these mistakes on your own. So sharing mistakes, being humble enough to share them, and then also having the courage to listen and take that information in so that you experience these mistakes without actually having to experience them in real life.
It goes so far. And I mean, it, obviously nobody wants to be in the situation you were in, but day in, day
Right.
out, if we can learn from the collective experience of how many people we interact with each day, I mean, there's
Yep.
thousands of hours of, right? I mean, pilots, 10,000 hours, right? Everybody's got their 10,000 hours in whatever they're doing. How can we learn from that and really collect that experience ahead of time before we might need it? Let's say that I see something unsafe at work, maybe, in the fields that we typically are talking about here are construction, oil and gas, mining. These can be some rough and tough guys that aren't always going to take
Yep.
your advice of listening super well. What are
Yep.
some of those first steps that you would recommend going about?
Well, obviously, start with yourself, and the way I do it, because I'm an international airline captain, and I'm flying in so with former fighter pilot myself. A lot of the guys flew fighters, so you know it's a dude's world, and dudes just have a hard time opening up and talking. They just are just bull right into the china shop and go. So I start with myself, and I just basically say, look, my skin is as thick as my skull. So if I'm in here and you see me doing something incorrectly, I don't mean to do it. I want to do it exactly the way that we're taught and we're trained. That's how I open it up. And because if I'm the supervisor and I'm leading these job briefings, because every job out there, whether you're in construction or mining or petroleum, you're going out with a purpose and you got a work to do. And usually that work starts with the briefing, with that job briefing where everybody's around the tailgate, the tailboard, whatever you want to call it. And it's usually the supervisor, the person in charge that's going to begin leading that. What you can do is start it off and then just proffer out there, would somebody like to tell me how they feel this job might go today? Or could you give me some of your thoughts on what you would like to see done today? And nobody's going to speak up. So you got to kind of have to, poke them a little bit. Hey, Fred, why don't you start us off? What are your thoughts on whatever it is? And it'll be interesting because then they will start to speak up and they'll talk. And, you're just listening. You're listening at their level of understanding of their own work, the scope of the job, how they feel, and you can get a sense of their attitude and their tone if they're kind of rolling their eyes or just like, then okay, I've got somebody that's probably not going to follow all the rules. And you don't have to call him out on it. You're just listening. So when he's done, just slide over to, Bob over here and get him to kick in, and then slide over to Marion and see what she has to say. And pretty soon you've got them talking and they're all working and thinking as a group, as a team, but you're the boss, applesauce. You're just kind of taking all this in, and then you're the decision maker. And once you've kind of heard everybody's input and their thoughts, even down to the youngest, the apprentice, watch this. The apprentices, they know a lot. They're the ones fresh out of training. They're probably the ones freshest on all the rules and policies that you haven't been studying since you were an apprentice. So listen to what they have to say, because they don't have the experience that you have, but they got some of that book knowledge. And then they might ask a few questions on that book knowledge that you might have forgotten. So now you've got this whole bucket, this collective bucket of communication that you've just taught them all, that you're open to hearing what they got to say without even telling them, oh, if you see something's not right, speak up and say something. No, you basically already taught them that I want to hear from you. I want to hear what you got. And then when you're all done, hey, Bob, I really like that idea of where you talked about getting the drag line and putting it over here and setting that up. And then, Mary, you had a great idea of doing so and so. So I think best today is that we do X, Y, Z. So you throw that out there and then you put it back out to them. Hey, does anybody see any problems with that plan? Do y'all see? No. Wait. Okay, listen. If we're going along today and this plan starts to fall apart, we're going to stop what we're doing. I want you to stop, hold your hand up. Let's pump the brakes, because I'm not married to this plan. This is the plan we're married to right now, but I'm not married to it. So we can pivot away from that plan. It's not. I don't have the pride that we're going to do this. No, we pivot away from it if we have to. We modify it. Change in work activity. We're going to come back to this tailboard and we're going to talk about that change, and we're going to do better from there. Slower is faster. So if you can slow down and get back into your logic brain, get out of the emotional side when you're out in the field, slow down, that work will actually go faster. So that's how good leaders create this open communication. Now, they might not always like the decision that you make, right? They just might not like it. But guess what? There's a much greater chance they'll support you in that decision because you took the time to shut your mouth and listen to what they have to say. And that tells them that you're not fighting for your way, you're fighting for the best way. And they get that.
Jeff, I'm pulling a lot of parallels with, or I can tell that a lot of these, at least to me, it seems like come from your time in the military as well. There's a lot of teamwork involved. There's a lot of breaking it down and really analyzing situations to see if you made the best decisions. Am I correct in saying that a lot of safety lessons can be learned from that time in the military?
You know, again, safety, if you think about it, just comes as a byproduct of doing everything as best as you can correctly. And actually, every mission that we flew as a flight leader, we actually flew it 5 times. 5 times. First of all, there's the planning part of it. So the planning is sort of like your tailboard meeting. That's when all you're getting together and you're talking about what you're going to do. You're putting a plan together. And you involve everybody in the plan because now they get the buy-in to the plan. So that's the planning. The second time you flew it is when you briefed it. So you've got the plan together, everybody's bought into it. Now the flight leader briefs it. Okay, this is hack your clock. This is when we're stepping to the jet. And you literally walk through every step from the radio check-in to how you're going to taxi out, even when you're going to close the canopies. Okay, we're going to be at the arming area, and when we get finished, I'm going to look left, I'm going to look right. I want y'all looking at me on this time hack, and I'm going to go like this. And when my chin hits my chest, I want to see all 4 canopies coming down at the same time. So now that's how detailed the briefing is. So now the third time you did the work was you flew the mission. You actually went out and you fly it. You fly the plan, you fly the brief. Now, does the job always go exactly the way you briefed it? Nope. So what you do is you kind of take notes of why didn't this go correctly. You got to be flexible. The key to air power is flexibility. You got to flex from the plan and be quick about it. But you kind of take these mental notes, and I kept a little knee board. I'd write on the knee board. As best as you could, you wanted to plan for contingencies, which is done back in the planning. Hey, if this happens, we're going to pivot to this. If this, then that. But you can't always plan for things. You got to be flexible. Well, guess what? Those things that caught you off guard, they're going to go back into lessons learned, which is actually the 5th time we fly it. So you fly the mission, you're paying attention to okay, contingencies worked here, they didn't work so well here. So you land. You go get a cup of coffee and a Coke because now the 4th time you fly that mission is in the debrief. And sometimes the debrief can last longer than the mission itself. But that's when you start from the very beginning and you just work your way through it. And everybody takes ownership of their piece if they screwed up. So I don't have to correct you, Mark, because I know you've written on your note cards everything that you could have done better, things that you did well, and you've also, I know, Mark, that you know things that I've screwed up. So I know you're probably not going to say anything to me until at the very end of the debrief. If I've missed something that I didn't critique myself on, you're going to speak up, and it's full on, and you're not criticizing me. You're criticizing what I could have done better, and how you present that is varied as the person who's presenting it. So that's the 4th time we flew it, is in the debriefing, and then the 5th time is in lessons learned. You write that stuff down and you transfer those lessons learned to the other fighter pilots or the other workers, whomever, who might benefit from those experiences, so they don't have to repeat the mistakes
It's
the
a,
next day.
it's applicable in just about anywhere, man. You can really
100%.
take this and anywhere
Yep.
in your own personal life, but the power of
Yep.
bringing this to a team almost it multiplies it, right? And
100%.
I mean, I'm sure it's benefited you in your life, but I mean, seeing this how this could impact organizations, especially in the safety space, where it is the component of that too is just huge. It's massive, right?
Yep. Yeah.
The near miss reports in particular stand out
Yep.
to me as a real opportunity here to expand on
Absolutely.
that.
Yep.
Jeff, something that I've thought about is the image that fighter pilots have working in high risk environments is they definitely have this image of risk takers. Everyone thinks of Top Gun comes to mind.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you reconcile that high risk image with your current role as a champion of safety? And did you have to overcome any sort of internal contradictions in mindset along the way?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very good question because um, yeah, it is a high risk job being a fighter pilot. And I think that's why I relate so well to so many industries out there. The utility industry, where you're working at line crews, overhead, underground, uh, um, in the construction business, in the petroleum, the chemical world. It is a very high risk and very dangerous work environment. So it takes a certain person and the mentality to go out and do that kind of work, right? I mean, that's what we're drawn to, and we're very can do, get it done kind of people. We don't suffer fools. We don't like sitting in classrooms. We are out there getting things done. Consequently, that those types of industries, fighter pilots included, they do attract certain types of people who are more prone to be your cowboys, more prone to be risk takers, because that's just how they're wired. And and as an organization, you have to be tuned into that, and you have to have good leadership in place that you don't squash that the mentality, but you don't have those type of behaviors. And sometimes those behaviors in those industries get rewarded, especially when we're up against a timeline. You get something really done, you just get old Fred over here to do it. He's a real cowboy, got good experience, but just look the other way and he'll make it happen. And many organizations have survived on that type of mentality. And actually, one of the anecdotes that I talk about, and I mentioned it earlier, was Bud Holland, where he was a great pilot. There's a lot of experience. He could fly the pants off that airplane. But he also broke a lot of rules when he flew it because he was very good at what he did. He was overconfident in his abilities, had poor approachability skills, and he exceeded a lot of limitations when he flew the airplane because he thought the rules really didn't apply to him. And and that kept itself going. The more he did it, the more emboldened he got. Now, when you're out there doing that as an individual, you're also showing other people who are watching that errant and unsafe behavior. So you start morphing into two types of work groups then. So one work group will go, man, I like how that guy works. I want to do like that. I want to emulate that behavior. He pushes back against management. He pushes back against the way it's done. He's very good at it. He hasn't hurt anybody, but he's getting stuff done. Then you have another work group that goes, hey, you're teaching others errant behavior. They might not have the experience that you have, and they might not understand how, why you're doing the way you're doing, or the shortcut that you're taking, and they might lose their life just watching you do it. Um, but you can get a divided culture, and that's exactly what was happening with this Bud Holland story. And then when I showed the audience of the crash, I actually like to have them all pretend for a moment. Hey, let's get out of the industry that you're in. Let's pretend that you're B-52 pilots. Congratulations on your promotion. So you're B-52 pilots, and let's pretend on the day of this accident that all of you knew Bud Holland personally. Maybe some of you, he was a friend of yours. Some of you trained with him, but you know how he was as a person. And let's pretend that you got a phone call and somebody told you that, hey, we had an accident today. Guess who it was? Would you be able to guess? Was it Bud Holland? Yep. Yep, it was Bud Holland. I knew it. So there's your I knew it person. And so my challenge is to the audience is, hey, who are the Bud Hollands in your organization? If you were to ever get a phone call and they were to tell you to guess who it was, would you be able to guess? That's the person I want you to go talk to after this presentation. And if you happen to be a Bud Holland, then you know who you are. Don't be pissed off that your brethren and your sisters are coming and talking to you. It's a conversation, not a confrontation. We're just trying to get things right, aligned, and do things right. Because the Bud Hollands can be really good for an organization if they're not out there bending the rules. So they have to be, retrained. Some of them have to be fired. But you'd rather not. You'd rather, use their experience for the betterment. And I just came out of a keynote today with the nuclear industry with the next level leadership class, and it was really cool to hear three dudes stand up. Kind of, we have an open discussion afterwards, and they all three said, "I was a Bud Holland. I was that person in my squad." And they gave examples, and they had to change their ways to do that, and that's tough to do because when you're no longer a Bud Holland, people will remember you as that. And they'll go, "Hey man, why do we got to do it this way now? I remember when you used to do such and such." So, and I also was a Bud Holland in my squadron. So it really helped me because I was very good at what I did. I became very confident, overly confident in my abilities. Started taking extra risks, and at least I had the the fortitude of having good leadership and good workmates that got me on the right path again to use that energy in the correct manner. So guidance, good leadership helps.
What an incredible answer. And it's so powerful to think that while he might not be here with us physically, the lessons learned and his own legacy is carried forward in the work that you do and your team does at Target Leadership. Jeff, I want to thank
Yeah.
you again for coming on the podcast here. You've got an incredible story, and I'm so excited for our listeners to get the chance to listen to this. And I think everyone, no matter where you are in life, is going to be able to pull something from it.